let's go over a little bit about how to value property. The step one, here we are. We have a seller that calls us. We ask them how much they want to sell their house for, what it's worth, those kinds of things. And they give us an answer. And based upon that answer, we decide to take a contract or not, or we decide to make an appointment or not. But we have certain steps we go through. So you're going to pull up a property profile. Now, I'm a member of the local multiple listing service, but I'm not a member of all of the multiple listing services throughout the country. Heck, there's 90 or so of them in California. You can't be a member of all of them. So you use also online service providers. And so I use FastWeb, which is a First American Title product. There's a couple products by CoreLogic that I pay a subscription for. And then I'm going to go to products like Zillow, Zillow. But I get some information from them that I don't necessarily use their price component information, but they have some information that I like. I go to companies or platforms. Let me pull them up here so I can read them off to you better. I use Bank of America's platform. Chase has a platform that I like. Appraisals has a platform that I like. Remax has a little platform that I like. And they're all going to kind of give you the same information, but what I'm looking for is, CMA, comparable market analysis or comparative market analysis. And I want to know, recent solds, actives, those kinds of things if I can get it. Now, most things except for the MLS are just going to have solds, and that's okay, I guess. However, I'd like to also know what's on the market because from a competition perspective, that's important. And I'm going to get that information from my BPO and my appraisal where I won't get it on my online due diligence. However, I'm still going to search online. And I'm going to go through that determination. I'm going to pull up the CMAs, and I want to look at certain characteristics of the property. So I'm not going to say I have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath property, and I look at houses that are 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Well, that's not a comparable. It's important that when you start looking at properties that have sold, properties that are selling, that you're comparing correctly. Look at the property profiles, making sure that you know the characteristics of your house. FastWeb is a great service. It's free. It's by First American Title. It's going to give you the bedroom size, the amount of bathrooms. Now you're going to have to confirm with the seller, is that 1.5 or is that 1 3/4? Because most likely the online reporting is going to say 2. The year built, which is an extremely important aspect of this model. Square footage, naturally, and the prior sales. Although that's not highly important, I want to look at the prior sales as well. If it was an interspousal transfer, or if it appears to be a non-family transfer, so a seller to a buyer, a traditional one, because that's kind of important too. Because the interspousals or the family transfers are going to have a lower value typically, because you're just giving someone something and they're not really paying you for it. And even if they are going to pay you for it, you have a reduced sales price. So I want to take that consideration. So I'm going to pull up the property profile, and I'm going to look for characteristics and make sure that they're the same thing. But then I'm going to look for, when I look for those characteristics and the same thing, I'm going to look for 5 years built of the subject property. So if I have a house that was built in 2003, then I'll go 5 years before that or 5 years after that. So 1998, 2008. Located within a half mile of the subject property, unless if I look at a Google map and I'm zooming down onto the property and I see like a major freeway, and on, you can have a house a half a mile away from another house and have a freeway go right through it kind of thing. Well, then I want to exclude those ones that aren't in the neighborhood. I'm really looking for within a half mile in the neighborhood, if that makes any sense. And then similar square footage, up or down of 200. So if I have a 2,000 square footer, I'll look at properties that are within 1,800 square feet to 2,200. A 1,200 square footer doesn't do me much good from a comparable perspective, and a 4,000 doesn't do me any good. So I really want to narrow it. Now, sometimes you're going to come back and you say, Mike, but I don't have those. I only have those other things. The less you have, the harder it is, which is why the component of hiring a BPO and appraisal is pretty important at the end of the day. And then we want to look at solds within the last 6 months. Not longer than that. If we have to start stretching out further than that to get something, maybe we shouldn't think. We should think about not buying it. Maybe we shouldn't buy it. I don't know if that makes any sense. The closer to the current property, the better. And because certain times of the year, you're going to sell houses for more than the other times of the year, so it's really important. And again, falling back to the same bedrooms and bathrooms. So if it's a 2-in-1, look at 2-in-1s. If it's a 1,200 square footer, look for 2-in-1s between 1,000 feet and 1,400 feet. If it was built, it's a 2-in-1, 1,000 square footer, built in 2000. Look for, 2-in-1 between 1995 and 2005. Similar type of structure. Now, I'm in California, and so we have a lot of frame construction. We don't have a lot of masonry construction, those kinds of things. But in some parts of the country, we do. We have different types of construction. So if the construction model, the things that they use to build a house is different, try to stay the same. And then if the architecture of the properties is different than, colonial and those kinds of things, we'll want to kind of stay, or if we can, similarly. Now, the nice thing about Google and some of the other platforms that you have out there is you can find your subject property. You can do a Google search for, the map kind of thing, and you can get a picture, and it'll tell you on the picture how long ago the picture was taken. And then once you find your comparables, and you're satisfied that they meet the criteria of the 200 square feet, the 5 years, the like-type bedrooms, bathrooms, those kinds of things, then pull up those pictures as well. Because what we're looking for there are the neighborhoods similar? They should be within a half mile, so they should be. But is the architecture similar? The style of the property similar? You can zoom down on it from the top view. You can go to OpenStreet Maps. You can zoom down on it. You can see the size of the lot, those kinds of things. That's kind of an important aspect of all this. And some of the other data sets are going to give you some of that information. In fact, one of the nice things about FastWeb is that it'll give you a plot map. And a plot map will actually show you the dimensions of the land, the property and the lot size and that kind of thing. So that's kind of an important aspect. You want to look for those things and make sure and look at the pictures. Save all those pictures. Open up a different browser, put them in a file somewhere, because you never know, you might be buying this thing. So rather than having to search back for the pictures again, just save them. If you don't buy it, delete them. It's pretty simple. Save the stuff. I use Box.net. You have Dropbox. You have all kinds of services out there. I like Box. I do. I like it. It doesn't mean it's any better than anybody else's. And I like the ability to create a folder that says all the property folders, and then the property folders are named the property address. So I can always go back to that, and then everything about the property is in that folder in subdivided folders. And so we'll have escrow, and we'll have purchase contracts and all that kind of good stuff. But we'll have pictures and the CMA and the BPO and the appraisal and all that kind of good stuff inside of that. So keep track of all that. Third step is I want you to call a realtor and ask them to run a CMA through the multiple listing service. Now, you can run your CMA using your 7 data sets that are online, your Zillows and your Bank of Americas and your Chases and your Remaxes and those kinds of things. But that's not going to give you active properties and sold properties that have come through or exclusively to the MLS. It's going to give you all properties, but nothing that's on the market. So, expireds are important, and especially in a market where or in a property where the seller has told you on the inbound questionnaires that they've had it listed before. Well, I want to know what they had it listed for and confirm the seller gave me the right information. And if I don't know that, at least I want to look it up and say, hey, has this thing been listed before, in the last 12 months kind of thing? Because that's going to give me a component of motivation and answer that question. Did they reduce the price sufficiently to me now? And even if they did, I want to know why it didn't sell before. So let's assume for a second that the seller had it listed and they had it on the market for $200. It was on the market for 180 days, didn't sell. They decided to be a FSBO. They called me off of my postcard. They want to sell it to me for $150. And that sounds like a great deal, right? Starting off, it sounds like, hey, $50,000 here, and I've got a reasonable seller. If it expired at $200, it wasn't worth $200. No one wanted it at $200. So I need to confirm that and then look at other properties around it and what they sold for. Maybe it was only worth $160, and now the $150 that they want for it doesn't qualify them to have me go out and knock on their door and say hello, because I have way too much things to do. Talk to sellers that don't want to sell. They're unreasonable. So the CMA is going to be pretty good. I want current listed properties. I want sell-pended properties. I want expired listings up to 12 months, and I want sold properties up to 6 months. So I want to know what's pending. The thing about pending, and it's one of the frustrating things, is that they don't say what it's pending at, what they agreed to sell the house for. They just say, hey, we've agreed to sell the house. We had it on the market for X dollars, And until it actually closes, we won't get that information. And it's proprietary and confidential information between the seller and the agent, so they can't share that or shouldn't share that with us. So there's no reason in calling them and saying, hey, what did you sell that for? Woo-hoo-hoo. Can you tell me secretly? Because they can't. They shouldn't. And if they do, don't ever use them as a realtor, because they're going to give you your information away to everybody else too. So I'm going to look for current listed properties, sale-pending properties, expired properties, and sold properties. And I want a CMA from a realtor. Maybe I don't have a realtor. Mike, I'm buying in Idaho and I don't know anybody there. Well, call up Century 21, call up Caldwell Banker, and call up, someone else. They're going to have an up desk, which is the desk that people sit at, realtors, real estate agents, brokers, those kinds of things, people. And they're waiting for that phone to ring. They're intentionally sitting there to talk to you. And you just say, hey, I have 123 Apple Street. They're not going to take your listing. They're sitting at a desk. If they're a guerrilla real estate agent, they're not going to be sitting at a desk. So don't be afraid that they're going to take your property and, undercut you or go list it instead of you buying it. Don't worry about that. But get 3 CMAs from them. You're going to get three sheets of the stuff that you need. Don't worry about it. Just get it. So if you don't know someone, it's an easy way to get it. It's not a hard thing. Besides that, you're going to need a real estate agent to sell it in Idaho, because you're not there to sell it. So you'll make a relationship at the same time. So it's a pretty good conversation to have. So they're going to give you a CMA, and you're going to look at that CMA, and it's going to show the addresses of the actives, the city of the actives, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the square footage. Don't tell the realtor, agent broker, your criteria for, don't give me anything within, 200 feet or above 200 feet up and down, and don't give me anything here and don't give me anything there. I want you to have a good perspective of the marketplace, because let's face it, if you're buying a 4,000 square foot house and there was 3 other ones that compare to it, so there's a 3,800 square footer, there's a 3,900 square footer, and there's a 4,100 square footer, and they've all sold in the last 6 months, and they're all similarly styled, but they're anomalies. 50 other ones are 2,000, 2,500 square feet. Those are the only large houses on the market. Well, you want to know what the market affords, what people going into a market are used to buying. And so having the other ones will give you some of that information. So it's important not to just get the comparables on like types to yours, but what is the market saying the buyer wants to buy? Because if you think about the social makeup of a neighborhood, they're fairly consistent. So if people are driving high-end cars, very rarely are you going to see a low-end car in that neighborhood. You will, but very rarely. Or if people are driving moderately, priced cars, very rarely are you going to see a Rolls Royce in that neighborhood. But you will. But you want to make sure that you're looking at it from what's normal, not what's extraordinary, what's an anomaly, if that makes any sense. So you're going to get that information. You're going to go days on market, which is really important. And they're going to give you this information, but look at that number. That number is going to be an important number to you, because sometimes if you have an average days on market, say you have 80 days on market is your average, and you have a house that popped at 8 days, but everybody else is, that 60 to 90 day range, which makes the 80 average. Well, you really want to look at that 8 day, that one that popped really fast, and ask yourself why. You may want to exclude it because it may be an anomaly. You never know. I mean, maybe it was the house that everybody wanted and there's only one of them kind of thing. Or maybe it was underpriced. Maybe the seller didn't make as much as they should, and you need to take that price into consideration. And maybe they just had a really good agent, and maybe you want to hire that agent. So really look at some of those things when you look at the CMA that comes back from the realtor. And naturally, they're not going to have the realtor's name on the property. Okay, but that's pretty simple to find. You go to realtor.com and you put the address in, and it's going to tell you who the realtor is. Okay, they're going to brag about it. And if you can't find it that way, it's going to tell you who the broker is, so who the Century 21 company is. Call that company up and say, hey, who has the listing over on Apple Street? And they're going to say, oh, that's with Susie Smith. And now you know. Maybe you need to talk to Susie and say, Susie, why did this house sell in 8 days? Everything else in that market takes 80. And Susie's going to say, yeah, I had a really motivated seller. They had to move out of town, and we knew we were $30,000 underpriced. Well, I need to know that. Make sense? So we're going to do some due diligence here. We're going to fact find more than just looking at this, black and white piece of paper here. You're going to look at the solds. You're going to look at the expireds. Again, you're looking for that expired. Has that property that you're buying been listed before in the last 12 months? And if it has, what value was it priced at? How much higher than they should have been priced at are they? How does that price compare to the price they're offering it to you now at? Step 4, you're going to do some analysis on that. You're going to look at your property, the pluses and minuses, and how yours compares to theirs. So again, it's a 2-in-1. It's 1,000 square feet. You're looking at things that are between 800 and 1,200 square feet that are 2-in-1s. On that kind of a multiplier, let's assume the lots are the same size. Everything except for the square footage is a little bit, is the same. That's the only thing that's different. On that property, you've got to be really conscientious that you do the division. You go, okay, well, 1,000 into whatever it sold for times 800, if whatever it is your price, because on the smaller houses, keep in mind, they still have kitchens, they still have a bathroom. The 2 components of a house that are the most expensive items in the house, all houses have. So on the smaller ones, if you use the multiplier, you could be a little bit wrong. All right? You could be undervaluing your property if your property is a smaller house. And so just compare that. You really want to try to zero that in, but this is just the first line of defense. Just the first line of defense, not a big deal. You're going to look at how far away it is. You're going to pull up that Google map, and you're going to see, pinpoint all those addresses and making sure that they're in the same neighborhoods, that there's not a major thoroughfare running between your comparables, railroad tracks, things that separate. And if you're out of the area, you won't know some of the social separations, but you certainly can see the physical separations. And if you're still within that half mile, the obsolescence, the economic obsolescence of the properties are going to be similar. Now you could have some functional obsolescence. So as you pull up your pictures, let's assume for your comparable sale, or your subject property that you're buying is a blue house, pink trim. Can you picture a pink trim blue house? Beautiful house. But everything else is a brown tone. Or your house is a rock roof, everything else is a comp roof. Or your house is a tile house, everything else is a shake house. Your house is a metal tin roof house, everything else is a 3-dimensional house. So you're going to look at the obsolescence. Is there what's different about it? Now you can't see the floor plan at this point unless when you were on your phone talking to the seller. One of the things we always do before we hang up when we were making an appointment with the seller is, I'm going to send you an email to confirm our appointment. Can you reply to that email with interior and exterior pictures of your home using your cell phone? Most people have a cell phone. Now, if they're not there, they're not there. If there is an absentee owner and it's tenant occupied, kids live in the house, whatever, they're not going to be able to do that. I understand. If that's the case, I want you to go to realtor.com and I want you to pull up the address to see if it was listed before and it's within their listing database. Because if it was listed before, sometimes you'll be able to see those interior listing pictures and get a pretty good feel for the interior part of the house. See if there's any functional design problems, like you've got a long, narrow living room, or you've got this massive fireplace that just takes up so much room. Your furniture is only going to be facing one direction, so it's really limiting the room. Or you've got really small exterior windows that don't have a lot of sunlight coming through them. Whatever it is, those pictures are going to be important for you to see the obsolescence and some of the functional issues with the house. Step outside of normal, okay? Start asking the questions. Get the information. Do some research. Next step, you're going to do your calculation. Now, this is the part that's going to get you a little bit in trouble, all right? If you're really not focusing on what's similar and what's different. And I'd like you, before you do your first one, start doing your calculations. And again, the smaller the house, we've got to be really conscientious that we don't underprice and overprice our house. The larger houses, we're going to be fine with that stuff. So if you got a 4,000 square footer and yours is 41 and someone else's is 40 or 4,000, you have to do your division and your multiplication. It's going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Smaller houses is where you're going to get in trouble. So the next thing I want you to do is go for a drive. I know, doing all this research, but I need you to, and sometimes it's valuable to go for these drives in advance of the appointment opportunity. Let's face it, we know the neighborhoods we're marketing to, right? We kind of know where the calls are coming from. And so why not on a, one day a week say, hey, I'm going to go out and spend 2 or 3 hours in this neighborhood. I'm going to write down all the FSBO addresses. If they're FSBO addresses, go knock on the door and see if you can buy a house. I'm going to write down all the realtor addresses, and I'm making appointments to go see the houses. But let's assume I didn't do that. So you're going to go for a drive. Here are some signs I want you to look for that is going to increase the value of your property and the sellability of your property. Are the lawns cared for? The trees trimmed? How many for sale signs are there? If there's few for sale signs, that's a good indication that you have a stable market. Are there children playing out front without fear? Now, I don't want anybody thinking you're a stalker, so be careful that you don't drive slow looking for kids. I'm not saying to do that, but you kind of know what I'm talking about. If it's a fun neighborhood, then that tells me it's a safe neighborhood, a desirable neighborhood. Is it close to new shopping centers? Not old shopping centers, new shopping centers, and desirable schools. Now, of course, you won't know necessarily desirable schools. However, you can do some research in advance when you're marketing to a neighborhood and go, hey, which schools are better than the other schools, because they're going to give you reports on the schools. You'll know, man, because a school will actually, in some occasions, promote a property. Is it close to bus routes? One of the key components that you'll see in a desirable neighborhood is do they have pool cleaners showing up? Do you see garden vehicles? Do you see pest control trucks? Are there service providers that are visiting the neighborhood to maintain the properties? Then are the properties maintained? Do you see, nice exterior paints, good roofing, driveways that aren't all broken up and, no one's parking on the lawn kind of thing, good landscape, new cars in the driveway. Let's face it. If you have a good neighborhood, you mean you have an upper income class neighborhood, there are going to be new cars. And then you're going to see renovations going on because people want to convert properties in that neighborhood to a better property. They like the neighborhood. They may not like the house they bought or the house they have. So they want to be in that neighborhood and they want to modify. So are there renovations going on? It's signs that, the values may not be strong. Well, you're going to sell houses in both of these markets. I'm just giving you indicators. Chain link fences, 4-foot fences. You've seen them. Bars on the window. Ouch. Graffiti like crazy, junk cars broken down, deteriorated houses, curled roofs, shutters that are, falling off, boarded up houses. That's a big one. Unmowed lawns. You can tell the difference between a manicured lawn and a not so manicured lawn. If someone's out there with a push mower mowing their lawn, or if someone's out there with a nice front throw with a grass trimmer and all that kind of stuff, you're going to see the difference in that lawn. No curb and gutter or sidewalks, or are there curb and gutter and sidewalks? And is there a high rental occupancy? So you see rental signs, or when you do your demographic of the neighborhood, how many rentals are in that marketplace? How many absentee owners are there? That's going to give you a good indication of a not so valuable neighborhood. And again, we're going to buy houses in either one. Again, you're going to look for obsolescence, functional economic. You're going to drive your comps. You're going to go and look at, so you have these comps from your realtors, and you're going to go look at them. If you can knock on the door, if you can set an appointment, great. I mean, I'd love to be able to have you get in there and ask the seller some questions about why they're selling, what they're selling for, what the concessions are, those kinds of things. I'd love to have you knock on the door of a couple of the buyers and say, hey, what did you get from the seller? Why did you buy this house? Was there anything about the neighborhood that you found out after you bought it that you weren't aware of? Why did you pick the neighborhood? What was it about it that made you buy it? What did you like? What did you dislike? So when I look at my subject property, I can now determine how my subject property fits and what the likelihood of success I'm going to have. So some of these things are important. And then you're going to do I call them 6-packs. There's some 6-packs to do, and it's not drinking. And you're going to interview the solds and the listeds, and you're going to interview the neighbors of the property that you're buying, looking for the motivation and looking for the amenities of the neighborhood. What's causing the turnover in the neighborhood? Or is there a lot of turnover in the neighborhood? What's causing the desirability of the neighborhood? And again, you won't know this stuff just by looking at a piece of paper. You've got to physically be out there doing it, much like what a realtor would know. An appraiser would know, because they'll know the neighborhoods that are pushing value and pulling value. We don't want to be caught in a neighborhood trying to push value. Like, man, it's trying to increase, but it just can't increase. We want, the neighborhoods that are very stable. So your 6-packs are very, very important.